Namaskar, I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Welcome to Global Scan. This is your one-stop destination for a roundup of all major global developments of the week. Afghanistan has fallen in the hands of Taliban once again. The pace with which the militant group captured provinces after provinces was shocking, if not entirely unexpected. Former President Ashraf Ghani fled. Kabul streets were filled with chaos as people scrambled for some space on the departing flights. The sights of desperation were symbolic of the worst humanitarian crisis of the recent times. While Taliban declared general amnesty, news of violence and brutality have already started surfacing in Global Scan. Special focus on Afghanistan and more. Let's get started with the top stories. Taliban takes over Afghanistan as insurgents enter capital Kabul. Afghan President Mohammad Ashraf Ghani leaves the nation. Panic and chaos grips the war-torn nation. US deployed helicopters, evacuate diplomats and staff from its embassy in Kabul. Thousands of civilians descend at the airport in attempt to leave the country. Residents fear Taliban will reimpose harsh orthodox practices. UN Security Council holds emergency meeting on Afghan situation. US President Joe Biden breaks silence on Afghanistan, says he is closely monitoring the situation on the ground, asserts the mission in Afghanistan was never nation building but to prevent terrorist attack on American homeland. Deaths toll from massive earthquake in Haiti rises. Many injured in the quake. Prime Minister Ariel Henry declares 3-day state of mourning. Help arrives from neighboring countries. United States says no plans to deploy its military personnel to Haiti. In sports, coach O.M. Nambiar, who trained the legendary P.T. Usha, died at the age of 89. Nambiar joined the armed forces and continued to pursue athletics. Union Sports Minister Anurag Thakur condoles the demise of Dronacharya awardee coach O.M. Nambiar. And let's first begin with the crisis in Afghanistan. The world's attention is focused on Afghanistan as it has once again slipped away from the hands of possible peace, liberty and democracy into the hands of violent and orthodox Taliban. The day after the fall of Kabul and exit of deposed President Ashraf Ghani, it was filled with panic and chaos for not just Afghans but also thousands of diplomats and embassy staff desperate to get out through the lone visible exit route, the Hamid Karzai International Airport. But with little luck. For the Taliban, the militant group has come full circle in these 2 decades, from their exodus in Afghanistan in 2001 to their recapture of Kabul.
A major crisis in Afghanistan. On Sunday, Afghans woke up to a new world. Complete panic and fear in Afghanistan as the government collapses. Taliban insurgents entered Afghanistan's capital Kabul on Sunday. Earlier on Sunday, the Taliban also took control of Jalalabad. The fall of Jalalabad has given the Taliban control of the road leading to the Pakistani city of Peshawar. The head of the Afghan National Reconciliation Council, Abdullah Abdullah, said in a video on his Facebook page that Afghan President Mohammad Ashraf Ghani had left the country. He also urged the Afghan security forces to maintain law and order in the city and asked people inside the city to remain calm. Later, Afghan President Mohammad Ashraf Ghani confirmed on his Facebook page that he had left the country, saying the move was to prevent bloodshed. In a post on his Facebook page, he said, if there were still countless countrymen martyred and they would face the destruction of Kabul, the result would have been a big human disaster in the city. He also said the Taliban is now responsible for protecting the honor and wealth of the Afghan people, adding that he will continue to serve the nation. And just after the move, Afghans decided to flee. A Taliban offensive waited to cross a gate into Pakistan at the border town of Chaman on August 15. People carrying their belongings were standing at the Friendship Gate crossing point manned by Pakistani army soldiers. Chaotic scenes were witnessed at Hamid Karzai International Airport in Kabul as thousands of people tried to flee the Afghan capital after the Taliban stormed the city. Residents fear the Taliban will return to past harsh practices and their imposition of strict religious laws. During their 1996-2001 rule, women could not work and punishments such as stoning, whipping and hanging were administered.
I have never felt it to this extent, helpless, hopeless, disappointed, poor and miserable in my life. All our 20 years achievement maybe just go away in blinks of few days. I was a child when they were here, when they were there. Now I am an adult. I have seen how these people are. Yes, we accept US should leave the country, but why this way? At least they should come a little bit, given some time. Our government, they should stay at least inside. They should not create this vacuum.
I felt really sad this time that he did such a thing and surrendered Afghanistan to Taliban. Now nothing can be said now. We have surrendered and so has our country. We will pray that something good happens with Afghanistan and it does not go worse from here. I don't want my country to be separated or destroyed completely.
My problem is that my wife is stuck in Afghanistan over there and I am unable to do anything to get her out of these as she does not have a passport. Only her mother has a passport and I cannot get her here.
US deployed helicopters to evacuate diplomats and staff from its embassy in Kabul. Thousands of civilians descended on the airport in an attempt to leave the country. Many civilians had already fled to the capital from other cities and towns in order to escape the Taliban's brutal military push through the country over the past week. Germany on August 15 shuttered its embassy in Kabul and prepared to send A-400M military transport planes to Afghanistan to evacuate as many Germans and local Afghan helpers as possible after Taliban insurgents entered the Afghan capital. As the crisis deepens in Afghanistan, an Air India flight with 129 passengers on board returned from Kabul to New Delhi on Sunday. Meanwhile, US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken on Sunday defended US President Joe Biden's Afghanistan withdrawal, saying that the idea that waiting would have caused a better outcome was fiction.
We are focused, and the President's focused first and foremost, on the safety and security of our personnel, and so we are moving personnel to the airport, to a facility there. We've been focused all along on making sure that they're safe and secure. We are working that very, very assiduously right now.
British Army's 16th Air Assault Brigade landed in Kabul on Sunday as part of Operation Pitting to support the evacuation of British nationals. The operation involved 600 members of the armed forces who have already begun to deploy. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said nobody should bilaterally recognize the Taliban as the government of Afghanistan. He also said it was clear that there would be a new administration in the country very shortly.
It's clear that there is going to be, or there is going to be very shortly, a new government in Kabul, or a new political dispensation, however you want to put it. We don't want anybody bilaterally recognizing the Taliban. We want a united position amongst all the like-minded, as far as we can get one, so that we do whatever we can to prevent Afghanistan lapsing back into being a breeding ground for terror.
Afghans who assisted Canadian government in Afghanistan arrived at Toronto Airport. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Sunday said the country was heartbroken as Taliban insurgents took control in Afghanistan.
Our commitment to the people of Afghanistan, including women and girls and the LGBTQ2 communities, remains unwavering. And we will honor the sacrifices of Canadians, our armed forces, diplomats, journalists, and civil society have made over the past years. Our government has also committed to resettling up to 20,000 Afghans through the ongoing Special Immigration Measures Program. Our ongoing work to bring Afghans to safety in Canada under SIMS remains a top priority, and we will continue to work in close collaboration with partners and allies on this commitment.
More than 60 countries issued a joint statement late Sunday saying Afghans and international citizens who want to leave the country must be allowed to depart, and added airports and border crossings must remain open. Insecurity started growing in Afghanistan, largely spurred by fighting in its provinces as foreign troops withdrew and Taliban insurgents launched major offensives, taking districts and border crossings. The territorial gains by the Taliban began as foreign troops led by the US military withdrew from Afghanistan after 20 years of war, leaving the task of pulling the country from a spiraling security crisis to the local forces. Bureau Report, DD India.
As the Taliban return to power in Kabul, international community have expressed anxiety over the turn of events in the coming weeks and months. Although the Taliban have declared a general amnesty across Afghanistan and urge women to join their government, their claims appear hollow given the reality of the past. Women fear that they have lost the hard-won gains as the Taliban complete their dramatic sweep through Afghanistan.
The biggest question begging an answer after the Taliban's return to Kabul is about the human rights of the vulnerable, minorities and most importantly the women and girls. They stand to lose hard-won gains as the Taliban complete their dramatic sweep through Afghanistan. Amid all the chaos in the Central Asian nation, the biggest concern is about the fate of women and what are the hardline Islamists planned for them. Though the Taliban has claimed that women would be able to participate in public life, however, their claim betrays the stark reality of the past. Afghan leader Farzana Kochai says she fears for her life first and her freedom to work and speak up.
I'm afraid of myself, my life, and my freedom to work and my freedom to speak up. These are the things that I'm afraid of losing them, because all of them are for me, like for you, for everyone. If you can't work, you can't talk, you can't go out. So that won't be a good life that you're having, and you can't define it as a life totally.
Kochai fears the worst for women in Afghanistan sparked by the memories of the bitter past. Kochai concerns are shared by Aisha Wahab, first Afghan-American woman elected to the public office in the United States. Nobel Peace Prize winner Malala Yousafzai also raised a concern for the safety of women in Afghanistan, recalling the horrors of earlier Taliban regime against the women.
I am deeply concerned about the situation in Afghanistan right now, especially about the safety of women and girls there. I had the opportunity to talk to a few activists in Afghanistan, including women's rights activists, and they are sharing their concern that they are not sure what their life is going to be like. A lot of them remember what was happening in the 1996 till 2001 time, and they're deeply worried about their safety, their right, their protection. They're worried about their access to school, and we have already seen news reports that many girls have been sent back from university. A lot of them have been asked to get married, at age 15, 12.
Senators in United States also feel the same way.
I fear also for the Afghan women and girls who in all likelihood are going to be put back into a totally untenable position by these barbarians.
At the United Nations Security Council meeting on Afghanistan, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres lamented that there were already accounts mounting human rights violations against women and girls. The world leaders and also the women in Afghanistan are praying that the Taliban makes good its promise on women's rights when they hold the reins completely. Coming days would tell whether the promises are kept or once again the nation is thrown to the horrors witnessed in earlier Taliban regime. Bureau Report, DD India.
Now, much of global criticism on Afghanistan crisis was directed at the Americans for the manner of the exit of their forces after 2 decades. But US President Joe Biden did not cede any ground. In an address to the nation, America that is, he defended his decision to withdraw troops from Afghanistan. Biden reiterated the United States was never supposed to work on nation building. It was the responsibility of Afghan political leaders who fled the country and the Afghan forces who failed.
US President Joe Biden has said that he stood squarely behind his decision to withdraw US troops from Afghanistan and rejected broad criticism of the chaotic withdrawal that is posing a crisis for him. Biden said that the mission of the United States was never supposed to be nation building, as he blamed the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan on Afghan political leaders who fled the country and the unwillingness of the Afghan army to fight the militant group.
I stand squarely behind my decision. After 20 years, I've learned the hard way that there was never a good time to withdraw U.S. forces. That's why we're still there. We were clear-eyed about the risks. We planned for every contingency, but I always promised the American people that I would be straight with you. The truth is, this did unfold more quickly than we had anticipated. So what's happened? Afghanistan political leaders gave up and fled the country. The Afghan military collapsed, sometime without trying to fight. If anything, the developments of the past week reinforced that ending U.S. military involvement in Afghanistan now was the right decision. American troops cannot and should not be fighting in a war and dying in a war that Afghan forces are not willing to fight for themselves.
Biden has faced a barrage of criticism, even from his own diplomats, over his handling of the US exit, pulling out troops and then sending back thousands to help with the evacuation. Thousands of civilians desperate to flee Afghanistan thronged Kabul airport's single runway on Monday after the Taliban seized the capital, prompting the United States to suspend evacuations. Biden said that he took full responsibility for his decision to withdraw, emphasizing his belief was correct and long overdue.
I will not mislead the American people by claiming that just a little more time in Afghanistan will make all the difference. Nor will I shrink from my share of responsibility for where we are today and how we must move forward from here. I am President of the United States of America, and the buck stops with me. I'm deeply saddened by the facts we now face, but I do not regret my decision to end America's warfighting in Afghanistan and maintain a laser focus on our counterterrorism missions there and other parts of the world.
Biden also said that his decision is the result of the commitment he made to American troops that he was not going to ask them to continue to risk their lives for a war that should have ended long back.
I cannot and will not ask our troops to fight on endlessly in another country's civil war, taking casualties, suffering life-shattering injuries, leaving families broken by grief and loss. This is not in our national security interest. Our leaders did that in Vietnam when I got here as a young man. I will not do it in Afghanistan. I know my decision will be criticized, but I would rather take all that criticism than pass this decision on to another President of the United States, yet another one, a fifth one, because it's the right one, it's the right decision for our people.
Biden also coupled his defense with a warning to the Taliban leaders: let the US withdrawal proceed unimpeded or face a devastating force. DD India.
In a shocking development, Taliban fighters in Afghanistan have shot and killed a relative of a Deutsche Welle journalist after hunting him down. According to the German public broadcaster, the terrorists were conducting a house-to-house search for the journalist, who now works in Germany. A second relative was seriously wounded, but others were able to escape. DW Director General has condemned the killing, which he said showed the danger to media workers and their families in Afghanistan. And amidst the Afghanistan crisis, let us understand why the world dreads the rise of Taliban once again. who they really are and the troubled past of Afghanistan. One by one, let's take a closer look at each of these crucial issues. Who are the Taliban, Pashtun movement and Mujahideen fighters? In Pashto language, Taliban means students. They emerged in the early 1990s in the northern Pakistan following the withdrawal of Soviet troops from Afghanistan. It is believed that predominantly Pashtun movement first appeared in religious seminaries. It originally drew members from the Mujahideen fighters who, with support from the United States, repelled the Soviet forces in the 1980s. Moving on, let's also take a look at the Taliban rule, which is so infamous, from 1996 to 2001. Taking a look at the Taliban rule, reign of terror, public executions, atrocities against women. Taliban ruled most parts of Afghanistan as Islamic Emirate from 1996 to 2001 with harsh interpretation of the Sharia code, public executions of murderers, adulterers and amputations of those found guilty of theft. Men were required to grow beard. Women had to wear all-covering burqa. Girls were denied education. They were forbidden from leaving home without a male guardian or a mahram, as it is called. Despite claiming that they've changed their stance on women's rights, the Taliban's actions and the latest efforts to commit thousands of women to sexual slavery demonstrate quite the opposite. Television, music, cinema were all banned during their rule. Various human rights and cultural abuses also took place. In fact, in 2001, Taliban went ahead with the destruction of the famous Bamiyan Buddha statues in central Afghanistan. From there, let's talk about the then fall and again the rise and emergence of Taliban. 20-year-long war it was with the US forces then decided to withdraw and the Taliban returned. In the aftermath of September 11 terror attack on the United States, Taliban gave cover to Osama bin Laden and the Al-Qaeda. The Bush administration declared war on terror. Taliban were removed from power in Afghanistan by the US-led forces in the year 2001 itself. What followed was 20-year-long war on terror and American presence in Afghanistan. Then, after different administrations, as President Biden announced withdrawal earlier this year, but Taliban has seized control of the country once again following a rapid offensive that we've all witnessed. Moving on, let's talk about Taliban 2.0 leadership, the new leadership that takes control of Afghanistan. First is Haibatullah Akhundzada, that's the supreme leader of Taliban, and Abdul Ghani Baradar, he's the top political leader. Akhundzada became supreme commander of Taliban in May 2016 after a drone strike killed his predecessor Akhtar Mansour. Akhundzada took up arms in Mujahideen's resistance to the Soviet Union, brutal 1979 to 89 campaign to prop up their puppet communist government in Afghanistan. He was then ahead of the Sharia courts that imposed a cruel fundamentalist interpretation of Islamic law on the Afghan people during the Taliban's first spell that I just talked about from 1996 to 2001. Afghanistan analysts see Akhundzada as primarily a religious leader, although as supreme commander he has the final say over the political and military affairs as well. And let's now talk about Abdul Ghani Baradar. Now, Baradar is the top of the hierarchy of Akhundzada's deputies. After fighting the Soviets as Omar's right-hand man in the Mujahideen battalion, Baradar joined his friend and others in founding of the Taliban in 1994, headed Taliban diplomacy in the recently concluded Doha talks. He signed the Doha Agreement with the Trump administration in February of 2020, in which the US said it would pull out all troops as long as Taliban pursued a diplomatic solution with the Afghan government and stopped any Al-Qaeda operations in areas under their control. Moving on from talking about Taliban, let's now talk about the troubled history of Afghanistan. In the next plate, we talk about the troubled history of Afghanistan. And from talking about Taliban, let's talk about the troubled past and present of Afghanistan, which had a history of chronic and unstable land full of conflicts. History of chronic instability and conflicts. Landlocked and mountainous Afghanistan has suffered such instability and conflict during its modern history that its economy, infrastructure continue to be in ruins, and many of its people are in fact refugees in different parts of the world. Most parts of 19th century in Afghanistan was marked by the Anglo-Afghan wars. Come 20th century, in 1979, Soviet army invades and props up a communist government. More than 1 million people die in the ensuing war in the war-torn Afghanistan. 1989, last Soviet troops leave. US and Pakistan-backed Mujahideen push to overthrow Soviet-installed Afghan ruler Najibullah. It triggers devastating civil war in the nation. 1996, Taliban seize control of Kabul, impose hardline version of Islam. 2001, US intervenes militarily following the September 11 attack. 2004, democracy shows these initial green shoots as Hamid Karzai is elected president, but it is again short-lived as Taliban insurgency grows in the country. By 2021, where we stand, Taliban recaptures Kabul after US forces withdraw. United Nations Security Council under India's presidency had a discussion on the situation in Afghanistan. Making his inaugural remarks, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the world is following the developments in Afghanistan with a heavy heart and urged the Taliban to exercise restraint and ensure that humanitarian needs are met.
The world is following events in Afghanistan with a heavy heart and deep disquiet about what lies ahead. All of us have seen the images in real time: chaos, unrest, uncertainty, and fear. Much lies in the balance. I urge all parties, especially the Taliban, to exercise utmost restraint to protect lives and to ensure that humanitarian needs can be met. And I call on all parties to provide humanitarians with unimpeded access to deliver timely and life-saving services and aid. And I also urge all countries to be willing to receive Afghan refugees and refrain from any deportations.
And further, UN Secretary General urged nations to stand as one to uphold human rights in Afghanistan.
Now is the time to stand as one. The international community must be united and utilize all available instruments to ensure the following. First, speak with one voice to uphold human rights in Afghanistan. I call upon the Taliban and all parties to respect and protect international humanitarian law and the rights and freedoms of all persons. We are receiving chilling reports of severe restrictions on human rights throughout the country. And I am particularly concerned by accounts of mounting human rights violations against the women and girls of Afghanistan who fear a return to the darkest days. It is essential that the hard-won rights of Afghan women and girls are protected.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar chaired the UNSC briefing on threats to international peace and security caused by terrorist acts in New York. He expressed solidarity with victims of terrorism, highlighted the need to never countenance terrorist sanctuaries, nor lack courage to call out those who extend terrorist state hospitality. He strongly put forward India's concerns, asking for clarity on the very definition of terrorism that doesn't justify or glorify violence.
Events unfolding in Afghanistan have naturally enhanced global concerns about their implications for both regional and international security. The heightened activities of the proscribed Haqqani network justifies this growing anxiety. Whether it is in Afghanistan or against India, groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed continue to operate with both impunity and encouragement. It is therefore vital that this Council does not take a selective, tactical, or even a complacent view of the problems we face. We must never countenance sanctuaries for terrorists or overlook the raising of their resources.
And the External Affairs Minister also reiterated 8-point action plan to credibly address the menace of terrorism and fully support for counter-terror cooperation under the auspices of the United Nations.
Let me reiterate some of its cardinal principles. One, to summon the political will. Don't justify terrorism, don't glorify terrorists. Two, no double standards. Terrorists are terrorists distinctions can only be made at our own peril. 3. Don't place blocks and holds on listing requests without any reason. 4. Discourage exclusivist thinking and be on guard against new terminologies and false priorities. 5. Enlist and delist objectively, not on political or religious considerations. 6. Recognize the linkage to organized crime. 7. Support and strengthen the FATF. And 8. Provide greater funding to the UN Office on Counterterrorism.
And moving on, let's now take a look at news from Americas. The death toll from massive earthquake in Haiti is soaring above the 2,000 mark. More than 12,000 people have been left injured. Several are still missing after the 7.2 magnitude quake. Thousands of homes have been destroyed. Rescue work following the deadly earthquake which struck Haiti on Saturday has been hampered by the heavy rains brought by Tropical Storm Grace. Prime Minister Ariel Henry has declared 3-day state of mourning.
Tragedy has struck the Caribbean nation of Haiti once again. The death toll from last week's massive earthquake is rising with every passing day. Hospitals in the country are struggling. According to official data, around 9,915 people have been injured in the quake, with many people still missing or under the rubble. The sudden pressure on the health infrastructure of the country has left mothers begging aid for children hurt in Haiti's quake.
I have got a girl named Sanon Esther. Since Saturday, the day of the catastrophe, she has a fracture on her head and there is a big injury in one of her legs. She was attended at a place named Le Porte. Then because of an inflammation, I was told to come to this hospital to get it cured. When I came here, she got an X-ray and they placed her in an aid. That's it. I don't know how her leg is now. I wish she could receive some medical attention because I want her leg to get cured.
The boy got fractured while under the rubble on Saturday. One of his legs is fractured. That is why I am here at the hospital with him. I haven't fed him anything since this morning. I thought they could treat him. I cannot find a doctor. I am going to have to buy something for him to eat.
The 7.2 magnitude earthquake and a series of aftershocks have flattened thousands of homes and buildings in the Caribbean nation. The earthquake has left 13,694 houses destroyed, while major damage has been caused to churches, hotels, hospitals and schools. Prime Minister Ariel Henry declared 3 days of national mourning starting Tuesday for those who lost their lives. The Prime Minister had earlier declared a state of emergency to pace up the search and rescue efforts. Help has also arrived from the neighboring countries. Venezuela, Chile, Mexico, Panama, Colombia and the neighboring Dominican Republic sent food, medicine and supplies. The United States also dispatched supplies and search and rescue teams. The US Coast Guard is helping to rescue survivors in Haiti. The earthquake brought down tens of thousands of buildings in the poorest country in the Americas, which is still recovering from an earthquake 11 years ago that killed more than 200,000 people. However, the United States has said there is no current plans to deploy its military personnel to Haiti. US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan on Tuesday said it was too early to gauge the impact of the earthquake on Haiti's political process, and US officials were in the process of assessing that.
It's too early to tell what the impact on the political process of the earthquake is. We are in the process of assessing that. We've got U.S. Coast Guard elements, and Southcom has mobilized with logistical and other support to be able to provide the kind of emergency response that is necessary in a human tragedy and catastrophe like this. There are no current plans to speak of to deploy U.S. military personnel to Haiti.
While Haiti struggles to overcome the damage caused by the earthquake, the authorities are now facing a new challenge and worries are not over yet for Haitians. People left homeless in the aftermath of the country's deadly earthquake hunkered down in tent shelters as Tropical Storm Grace swept through the region. Heavy rain fell over Lake Cayes, the southern coastal city that bore the brunt of the massive earthquake, which is the strongest in the region in 11 years. The latest natural disaster comes just over a month after Haiti was plunged into political turmoil by the assassination of President on 7 July this year. DD India.
And let's now take a look at COVID pandemic-related updates from across the world.
New Zealand has once again imposed lockdown in the country to restrict the spread of the infectious Delta variant of the COVID-19. New Zealand goes for the lockdown for the first time in 6 months. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern on Tuesday ordered a snap 3-day nationwide lockdown after a person was confirmed positive for the Delta variant. She also said that there were now 5 confirmed cases in total, all linked to the original infection. One of the new cases is a fully vaccinated nurse from Auckland Hospital. The country will be in level 4 lockdown, the highest alert level, while Auckland will remain in lockdown for 7 days.
Level 4 will be for an initial period of 3 days, except for Auckland and the Coromandel Peninsula, who we anticipate will likely be at level 4 for 7 days, due to them being most closely linked to our current case. Over this time, we will be looking for testing results from people from locations of interest, wastewater testing, and general community testing of those with cold and flu symptoms elsewhere in the country. We have made decisions on the basis that it is better to start high and go down levels rather than start too low, not contain the virus, and see it move quickly.
Japan has on Tuesday extended its state of emergency in Tokyo and other regions and announced new measures covering 7 more prefectures to combat a spike in COVID-19 infections across the country. The current state of emergency, the 5th of the pandemic so far, was due to expire on 31st of August but will now continue till 12th of September. Tokyo reported 4,377 new COVID-19 cases on Tuesday after a record 5,773 on Friday. The emergency will now cover nearly 60% of Japan's population. In Uruguay, about 1 million of people have signed up to receive a 3rd dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. On Monday, people queued up to get Pfizer booster shots, which the country is offering to those who've already received jabs of China's Sinovac. According to a recent study, antibodies triggered by Sinovac Biotech's COVID-19 vaccine declined below a key threshold from around 6 months after the 2nd dose for most recipients, but a 3rd shot had a strong booster effect. Uruguay has so far administered more than 50.16 lakh doses of COVID-19 vaccines. In Paris and large parts of France, shopping malls are asking clients to show a health pass as the government increases pressure on people to get vaccinated. The requirement to show proof of vaccination or negative COVID-19 report will apply on malls with a surface area of over 20,000 square meters in regions where the infection rate is higher than 200 cases per 100,000 citizens per week. In the US, the number of children hospitalized with COVID-19 has hit a record high. Children below 12 years are not eligible to receive the vaccine against COVID-19, leaving them more vulnerable to infection from the new highly transmissible variant. As per data from the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, numbers of newly hospitalized COVID-19 patients aged between 18 to 29, 30 to 39 and 40 to 49 are also hit record highs this week. In Macau, the diocese announced all churches and mass centers will be closed to the public. The decision comes after 4 new cases of COVID-19 reported earlier this month. Mass will be broadcasted online and the Holy Communion will be distributed at the church door. The diocese also announced that the Holy Communion will be distributed after a live Sunday Mass broadcast. Meanwhile, the Labour Affairs Bureau has suspended the application for the government's employment-oriented subsidized vocational training program. Australia has suffered its worst day since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, with total daily cases surpassing the previous record posted more than a year ago as a Delta variant outbreak spread as far as New Zealand. New South Wales recorded 681 new cases, where stay-at-home orders have been enforced for almost 2 months. Meanwhile, Victoria State recorded 57 new infections as Melbourne endures its 6th lockdown since the pandemic began. New South Wales, Victoria and Australian Capital Territory recorded a combined 754 cases in their communities on Thursday, surpassing the nation's previous high of 725 recorded in early August 2020, when Melbourne was in the midst of a lockdown that lasted for 3 months. Global Scan Desk, DD India.
More news and developments from across the world in fast-forward mode.
Ivory Coast on Tuesday expanded its Ebola vaccination drive in the commercial capital Abidjan after launching a campaign to vaccinate health workers. Around 5,000 doses were made available to the country by the World Health Organization. Residents of the Abidjan neighborhood were the first of the general public to receive vaccinations on Tuesday after an 18-year-old woman tested positive on Saturday. The woman was diagnosed after traveling by bus to Abidjan from neighboring Guinea. Health authorities have so far identified 9 people that the woman came in contact with. One suspected Ebola case is in hospital. Workers at the hospital in Abidjan, where the woman was admitted, were also among the first to receive vaccinations. In Jerusalem, planes and firefighting crews on Tuesday battled a wildfire in wooded hills outside the country to keep them away from a hospital. The blaze, some 10 kilometers west of Jerusalem, sent clouds of smoke billowing east. But there appeared to be little danger the fire would reach the city. No serious injuries have been reported so far. Israel's Fire and Rescue Authority said 45 crews and 8 planes were fighting the blaze, which the country's internal security minister said burned around 17,000 hectares on Sunday, forcing hundreds to evacuate. Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett toured the area by helicopter on Tuesday to check the wildfire situation. The Fire and Rescue Authority said an investigation has been launched into the cause of the fires. In Bolivia's San Matias, the sky turned red due to the burning wildfires in the region. Firefighters have been struggling to bring the blaze under control. According to Bolivia's Friends of Nature Foundation, over 24,000 hectares of forest have burnt in the country so far this year. The mayor of San Matias has declared fire-ravaged areas a disaster zone. Meanwhile, the locals fear that if these fires are not contained, they could impact the country's food supply. With climate taking catastrophic turns all over the globe, wildfires have been raging in various parts of the world. Firefighters battled flames from the Caldor Fire east of Sacramento, California on Wednesday, with helicopters making multiple water runs from Jenkinson Lake. 2 weeks after the Dixie Fire destroyed most of the gold rush-era town of Greenville, the Caldor Fire a few miles southeast exploded through tinder-dry trees and ravaged Grizzly Flats, a forest community of around 1,200 people. Fire officials on Wednesday estimated that at least 50 homes had burned in the area since the fire erupted on Saturday, and 2 people were hospitalized with serious injuries. California, which typically experiences peak fire season later in the year, was on pace to suffer even more burnt acreage this year than last year, the worst fire season on record. Firefighters battled roaring wildfires in the Var department of France on Wednesday. Wildfires ripped through a forest near the southeastern French commune of Vidauban. On Wednesday, local authorities reported the wildfire burning in the hills behind Saint-Tropez since Monday had killed at least 2 people. The wildfire, covering 7,000 hectares, injured 22 people, 19 of them due to intoxication, according to a local official. 5 firefighters have also suffered minor injuries. High temperatures and strong winds forced local authorities to evacuate around 7,000 people from homes and campsites, many to the safety of municipal buildings and schools. Fires were raging in Argentina's Cordoba province on Wednesday morning, prompting evacuations and threatening to destroy homes. Argentine firefighters from 6 fire stations struggled to control wildfires in Intiaco, San Clemente and Potrero de Garay to prevent the flames from approaching residential areas. According to local media, 100 people have been evacuated from Potrero de Garay, 770 kilometers from Buenos Aires, where the flames have destroyed 40 houses. Cordoba's government warned of an extreme risk of fires throughout the province amid the dry and windy weather. Global Scan Desk, DD India.
Stories now from a more intimate world around us, stories beyond headlines.
14 wild elephants continue to head south towards their protected habitat in southwest China's Yunnan province after a 1,300-kilometer trek that captured the public's imagination, according to the state television station CCTV. Yunnan deployed more than 25,000 police and staff and 1,500 emergency vehicles to track and feed the elephants and guarantee public safety. More than 150,000 people were evacuated along the migration route, and more than 5 million yuans in insurance funds dispersed to cover property damage. In April this year, 15 of the elephants left Pure and meandered more than 1,300 kilometers through the cities of Yuxi and Honghe before reaching the outskirts of the provincial capital of Kunming in June. Dozens of loggerhead caretta baby turtles surprised volunteers of an environmental group after hatching from a previously unknown nest at an Italian beach. Track marks of the hatchings were visible on the Scala dei Turchi beach, close to the Sicilian town of Agrigento, as some made it to the sea overnight while others hatched in the morning. Environmental group Maremico said that 74 made it to the sea while 5 didn't make it. The loggerhead sea turtles are an endangered species of oceanic turtle that live in the Atlantic, Pacific and Indian Oceans and the Mediterranean Sea. Their population has declined in recent years due to hunting, loss of beach nesting sites, over-harvesting of their eggs and being caught in fishing gear. In Australia, a fossil was originally found in outback Queensland almost 10 years ago, has been revealed by researchers to be the largest kind of pterosaur ever found in the continent. The pterosaur fossil was discovered near Richmond in northwest Queensland by Len Shaw in 2011. Tim Richards, a PhD student at the University of Queensland, led a research team that analysed the fossil, discovering the flying reptile would have had a wingspan of around 7 meters. Pterosaur remains were rare and not much was known about the diversity of the species. The name of the species integrates words from the now extinct language of the Wanamara Nation in Queensland. Scientists have said that an astonishingly well-preserved cave lion cub found in Siberia's permafrost lived 28,000 years ago and may even still have traces of its mother's milk in it. The female cub, named Sparta, was found at the Semyulyak River in Russia's Yakutia region in 2018. And a second lion cub called Boris was found the year before, according to a study published in the Quaternary Journal. The cubs were found 15 meters apart but are not only from different litters but were also born thousands of years apart. The 2 cubs aged 1 to 2 months were found by mammoth tusk collectors. 2 other lion cubs named Yuan and Dinah have also been found in the region in recent years. Cave lions have been extinct for thousands of years. Climate change is warming the Arctic at a faster pace than the rest of the world and has thawed the ground in some areas long locked in permafrost. In a new study of woolly mammoths that roamed Alaska 17,000 years ago, shown that it has covered enough ground in its 28-year lifetime to nearly circle the globe twice. The findings show how the male mammoth went through infancy and youth as part of a herd, but died alone from starvation in Alaska's northmost mountains. The mammoth's movements were traced through analysis of isotopes in one of its well-preserved tusks. The scientists sliced open the tusk, exposing the layers that were added as the animal grew to generate more than 400,000 data points for the study. Alaska areas that are now boreal forests were grassy steppe-like terrain, ideal for grazers such as woolly mammoths. The study also said that at the age of 15 or 16, the mammoth dramatically increased the distance and range of its travels. In its later years, the mammoth roamed some routes that caribou use today. Researchers said that it is possible that the mammoth shared migration paths with ancient caribou. China's frost-resistant fusing bullet train launched its first trial run in the northeast China's Heilongjiang province. The CR400 BFG train, the most frost-resistant member of the Fuxing family, has a design speed of 350 km per hour. The train has been specifically designed to operate at temperatures down to -40 degrees Celsius. The Mudang-Jiang-Jiamusi high-speed railway is regarded as the country's easternmost high-speed railway that passes through some of China's coldest areas where temperatures would plummet to -35 degrees Celsius during wintertime. The CR400 BFG train's trial run is considered as a key step for the type of train's fully operation on the line. World Today Desk, DD India.
Time now to turn on the time machine and see the importance of this week in history.
It was on August 16 in the year 1949 when United States journalist and author Margaret Mitchell died. She wrote only one novel, Gone with the Wind. Mitchell received the Pulitzer Prize for fiction for the book in 1937. Later, in 1939, the book was adopted into a movie starring Vivien Leigh in the lead role. On August 16 in the year 1960, Cyprus became an independent republic with Archbishop Makarios as its first president. Cyprus is the third largest and third most populous island in the Mediterranean. On August 16 in the year 2009, 22-year-old Usain Bolt set a new world record for 100 meters dash at the World Championships in 2009. Bolt ran the fastest ever 100 meters in 9.58 seconds. His record remains unbroken. On 18th of August in 1932, Scottish aviator Jim Mollison made the first transatlantic solo flight from east to west from Port Marnock, Ireland to Penfield, Canada. On 18th of August in 2008, Yelena Isinbaeva set world record in women's pole vault final at Olympic Games. On 19th of August in the year 2003, a massive truck bomb devastated the United Nations headquarters in Baghdad, killing 22 people in the worst attack on a UN civilian complex in the United Nations history. The dead including Sergio Vieira de Mello, the top UN envoy to Iraq. On 21st of August in the year 1911, Leonardo da Vinci's painting of the Mona Lisa was stolen from the Louvre in Paris by an Italian waiter, Vincenzo Perugia. It was recovered in 1913. Global Scan Desk, DD India.
Let's now take a look at some sporting action. In cricket, Team India has gained psychological edge by winning the second test against England. Going forward, the third test will now be played from August 25th at Headingley Stadium. Virat Kohli's team is leading with 1-0 in the 5-match series. In such a situation, it will be difficult for England to beat India. Here's more.
The third test between India and England is to be played at Headingley from 25th of August. Team India has already taken a 1-0 lead in the 5-match series by winning the second test, whereas the first test match was a draw. Going forward, Virat Kohli's team would like to retain Headingley's record as the team has not lost any match at this venue since past 54 years. If Team India wins the third test, then the team will not lose any series so far. Whereas in the 5-match series played in England in the year 2018, India were defeated by 1-4. Whereas in the match played from 22nd to 26th of August in the year 2002, India scored 628 runs for 8 wickets while playing first. After this, captain Sourav Ganguly declared the innings. Sachin Tendulkar, Rahul Dravid and Sourav Ganguly all three scored centuries in the match. Sachin scored 193, Dravid scored 148 and Ganguly scored 128 runs. Apart from this, Sanjay Bangar also scored 68 runs. Fast bowler Andy Caddick took 3 wickets. The English team under the captaincy of Nasir Hussain could only score 273 runs in the first innings. Stewart scored the highest with 78. Leg spinner Anil Kumble and off-spinner Harbhajan Singh took 3 wickets each. The English team could not do much in the second innings as well and could only score 309 runs. Nasir Hussain scored 110 runs while Kumble took 4 wickets. However, no player of the current team, including Team India's captain Virat Kohli, has played a test match at Headingley Stadium so far. In such a situation, the third test match is going to be even more challenging for all Indian players. Team India was also close to victory in the first test played in Nottingham, but the last day's play could not be played due to rain. With just 1 win away, Virat Kohli will also become the Indian captain with most number of test wins with this in England by winning 1 more test. Sports Desk, DD India.
And coach O.M. Nambiar, who trained the legendary Indian athlete P.T. Usha, died at the age of 89 on Thursday. Under his guidance, P.T. Usha began winning medals at the Asian level, but his best move was the making of sprinter switch to 400-meter hurdles before the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics. More on him.
O.M. Nambiar, the man who transformed a village girl P.T. Usha into Asia's golden girl, passed away in Kozhikode on Thursday evening. He was 89 and is survived by his wife, 3 sons and a daughter. One of India's most famous coaches, Nambiar spotted P.T. Usha at a very young age in 1976 and soon began coaching her at the Kannur Sports Division. Union Sports Minister Anurag Singh Thakur condoled the death of Dronacharya Awardee coach O.M. Nambiar. He tweeted, "I extend my deepest condolences to the family of Padma Shri O.M. Nambiar ji, who passed away on Thursday." He coached many prominent Indian athletes including P.T. Usha. His contribution to Indian sport will always be remembered. P.T. Usha took to Twitter to share a special message for her former coach. "The passing of my guru, my coach, my guiding light is going to leave a void that can never be filled. Words cannot express his contribution to my life. Anguished by the grief, we'll miss you, O.M. Nambiar sir." Under his guidance, P.T. Usha began winning the medals at the Asian level, but his best move was making the sprinter switch to 400-meter hurdles before the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics. And P.T. Usha almost came very close to winning an Olympic medal, missing it by 1/100th of a second. That transformed the sport in the country and inspired thousands of children to take up the athletics. Born in Kannur in 1932, Nambiar joined the armed forces and continued to pursue athletics. He retired from the Air Force in early 1970s, completed his diploma from National Institute of Sports in Patiala and joined Kerala Sports Council. Sports Desk, DD India.
And as we conclude this edition of Global Scan, we're leaving you with images that stayed in news this week. Till we meet again, namaskar.